Hi guys, I want to talk a little bit about using the SMSU library resources for your research and beginning to build your annotated bibliography, or really your works cited page for your essays as we continue through the semester. So I'm going to start here on the SMSU website. It's just smsu.edu. Hopefully you're all familiar with this website, as this is where you have to go to access your email and your D2L page, your e-services, all of that. So on this quick links tab on the side here, if you click on that, it'll bring up your library option. So why don't you go over to the library page, and in here, now I know we've talked about the OneSearch database being everything that the library has access to. The thing to consider with that is also including physical copies of journal articles that they have at the library. So be careful of what you're looking at when you search for those things. Okay, if you're having a hard time finding the actual full text of those sources, that's probably because it's one that they have on campus. And so we can't access that on the iPads or on your computers. So I would actually encourage you guys to start using this A to Z database list. How I'm going to start my research today is I'm just going to start really wide, really broad with Academic Search Premier. A lot of these databases funnel through host database websites. So basically that's just a fancy way of explaining, like, if I'm going to use the Business Source Premier, it's going to look very similar to Academic Search Premier because it's using the same hosting search engine, if you will. Instead of using Google, it's using an EBSCO host or an Academic Search Premier, but it's limiting it to only business articles, business sources. So I'm just going to stick here with the Academic Search Premier to try and keep my search really broad right now, because I'm not sure exactly how specific I want to get in with these other databases yet. So I'm going to hit go. You should be familiar with this as well. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and type just the most basic of search terms for my topic, which is the teacher shortage. Okay. Hit search. And while this article looks tempting here, why not robot teachers, artificial intelligence for addressing teacher shortage? My problem here is that it's not a full text that I have access to right here. I would have to search for a place that does feature the full text for me to use. Now, instead, I'm going to switch over here to my full text and narrow that down. Now, if you're really concerned about the publication date, you can narrow that as well. I might just leave it open and be mindful of looking at the year as I'm going through. Fortunately for me, my topic is pretty modern. It's basically in the last 10 years or so. So actually even less than the last 10 years. So a lot of my resources should be pretty recent, unless it is referring to a different teacher shortage in history, right? So this first one, teacher shortage and attrition, why did they leave? That's probably going to be a good one for me. This one's from 2016. That sounds great. That all checks out. British Educational Research Journal. This might be a sticking point for me if I'm focusing in on the American teacher shortage. Okay, so I might want to keep that on the back burner for the time being and come back to it if I really need to, but I think I'm going to focus my search on American sources. So here, solving the teacher shortage, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. That sounds great. It was published in 2017. So if I go into this, let's say I'm not so sure about this, the actual publication. Okay, I'm going to do a quick Google search and see if I can find credibility in this. Okay, so it's a members only thing. It's an organization that publishes 6 times a year. Okay. International Journal for what? For professional educators. That sounds great. Okay. So now that I know that this has some credibility, I can actually go in here, take a look at what I've got going on. If you have not already familiarized yourself with this page of these databases, over on your right hand side you'll find some really helpful tools here. So you can choose to save the article or this information here. You can print it, you can email it to yourself. So if you're very concerned about holding on to these, email is a good option, or downloading them is a good option. I think what's going to be helpful for me though is the cite button, because this will bring up the citations. These databases so badly want you to cite your sources that they will even give you the citation that you need. So I'll go over here to what I have as my annotated bibliography that I'm working on. You'll notice that my formatting is a little wonky here, so I'm going to want to fix that. to meet our requirements. Times New Roman, size 12 fonts, and then we want double spaced here. Not only that, I need to make sure that I have my hanging indent. And I also want to make sure that everything is italicized that needs to be italicized, because once I switch it into this normal text, or I start switching and playing around with my formatting, it might get rid of my italics. So here I need the publication, Delta, Kappa, Gamma, Bulletin. I need that to be italicized, and I need EBSCO-host to be italicized, because that's my hosting site. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to take care of that, so everything comes out the way I want it to. Okay, and that's just how I have done one. Now on your citation area here, I'll show you a little trick in a second as well. From this page, I can look at my PDF full text. This is where I can also download or print the article. I can even pre-read it. If I decide right away that it's not something that's going to be helpful for me, then I can just not even waste my time. If I do find it interesting, I can download it and save it wherever I need it to go, maybe in a Google Drive folder to be looking at later, or I might want to print it because I am old and like to use a highlighter and an actual pen to mark up my documents. In any case, this is where you have access to that. Okay, so if I keep scrolling down here, these don't look necessarily interesting. Tackling the teacher shortage. So I'm going to add this. It looks like it's from the Education Digest 2016. That all looks good. It's talking about specific areas, which is going to be helpful for my essay, talking about specific places in America that the shortage has hit hardest. And I'm going to want to cite that before I move any further to make sure that I'm keeping track of these documents. Now, here's one that I'm going to want to fix. Because when I put this in here, and I still have to change my formatting and everything, but when I put this in here, I'm noticing that my author's name is all in caps lock. We don't want that. So if you're seeing that, you are just going to have to do a little work on your own and fix it. You want to keep it in the same formatting, and then I'm going to take out the old one. I don't want that. We don't want anything goofy. I'm also going to want to go through and italicize those things that were lost in translation. And that'll help me out. Still want to make this double spaced. And then my hanging indent is always. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of using these underline in the blue, so I can just change that up here. So it's all uniform. Look at that. Okay. So now when I'm working on my annotated bibliography, I can just go through and begin typing about this one. Remember, in your annotated bibliography, you want 200 to 300 words explaining, summarizing what your article is all about, maybe identifying how you're going to use this in future essays, pulling out information that you think is going to be helpful right away, and already starting with your in-text citations. Okay, a lot of times on these, if I'm looking at this Deborah Yaffe one, for example, it says that it goes from pages 11 to 15 of this Education Digest. And I'm looking at that here. If I open this up, my in-text citation is going to be the last name of the author. So that'll be that Yaffe. And I'm also going to want to include the page number that I found a certain information on. For example, if I'm looking at this article here, and it gives me this whole list, right? But superintendents who have teaching vacancies are turning to an array of new and creative strategies, such as starting the hiring process earlier, looking for farther afield for recruits, offering perks and signing bonuses, and ramping up efforts to help candidates earn teaching credentials. Maybe I want to pull some of that out word for word. If I do that, I'm going to type that out, and my in-text citation is going to be the last name. Let me put this down here. And the page number that I found it on, which is going to be page 11. That's all my in-text citation has to be after I've typed out my quotation.